Slowly get started now. Page 2. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, one God beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfect. Of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer of the shadow clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, as supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, and said, I am supreme in this world. To you, who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, you I prostrate. You are immaculate, three worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one come to thusness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that dharma which pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. So do your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the foe of false, and be delivered from samsara's ocean.
Baba Bunjo from Laka, Nige Lagi, Toba Bujina, Chande, Yoga, Jabu, Pomorilla, Gilon, Kindu Jambola, Janju, Sebe, Kindu Jambola, Tabo Jitu, Jubi, Chande, Samona, Shija, Chuji, Nadangi, Dingen, Zena, Nyobrush. Yang di ce chanju samba samba chenmo pama chere se wanju sherav je paru samo jeva nila ya raji je pama nama de zalan de ma shari bo chanju samba samba chenmo pama chere Anjola dige je me do ri je bo kala la sherav je paru do chenpo samo chebo chebo de bo de chedar la par cha dige je me ba Anjo samba samba jemo baba jire je wanju je salan demba shari tatip dige je mezo shari bo rige mo kala la shara ye paru do chebo samo chebo chebo de Deda namba dawa chade bumbo ngabo deda maya la ye tongwa namba Chezo dao su tongwa o tongwa ni su 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 le tongwa ni shema ye tongwa ni le yang su shema ye no de shen du so da du shi da du ji namba shema na tongwa o deda che dang je tongwa ni de zi ni me ba ma je pa ma ga ba ti ma Jawa me ba gangwa me ba o shari bu de la o na tongwa ni la su mi so me Java me, me, now me, name, Jimmy, Lume, Ime, Sume, Dame, Timmy, Roman, Jomedo, Miji, Gamma, Ije, Gamma, Ije, number Shippe, Kangi, Badu, Yamedo, Mariba, me, Mariba, Kashime, Kashi, Sebe, Badu, Yamedo, Dejendo, Dume, Wada, Guju, Wada, Kobana, Lami, Ishime, Toba, Mado, Yamedo, Sheri, the Dawana, Sanju, Sembana, Toba, maybe, Shir, Tejine de Samajaba Meji Taba Mede Chijelo Leshin Baru Doji Bala Lana Meba Yanda Bozo Bejan Yudo Mobarzo Barsan Jezo Tegavena Shiraki Baru Doji Ribajin Bunga Lana Mebena Vinyabada Nyambena Tunge Tanje Ratu Shivar Shiva Mizubena Debra Shiva Zade Shiraki Baru Doji Meba Meba Tia Ta Gati Gati Para Gati Para San Udi Zowa Shariku Chanju Semba Semba Chimba Deda Shiraki Baru Samola Labra Chao Dene Jumdi Tingi Lezo rije ko te sino te sine jira juje te ma shin tu chira je par tu je ma sa mo na che par shin shava na ke jesu hiram jomden de ge te ka za ne te ran jamba shale ta de jo zamba zamba jamo baba jele de onju la tham je la de be kor de la adam mi ta ama ye ta de la che de ti jomden de je sumba la mo ba de to
Page 11. Thus I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling, speak, together with the great assembly of monks and bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was totally absorbed in the concentration that examines all phenomena, called profound illumination. And at the same time, the lower level of the Bodhisattva was engaged in the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond, analyzing the five aggregates by nature and then through the inspiration of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra spoke within the lower level of Gita, the Bodhisattva was saying, how should those of good family learn to worship? Replied to the Venerable Shariputra saying, Lord Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of good family wishes to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond should look at it like this, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, karmic formations, and consciousness are all empty. Therefore, Shariputra, all phenomena are empty without characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are neither impure nor free from impurity. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no karmic formation, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. There are no spheres of the eyes, up to no spheres of the mind. There are none of these, all the way up to the sphere of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, nor is there destruction of ignorance. There are none of these, all the way up to age and death. Thus there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, and no path. There is no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, all bodhisattvas hold to the wisdom gone beyond, and because there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. Passing utterly beyond falsity, they reach beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in military times by relying on the wisdom gone beyond, fully and clearly awakens once who pass most perfect and complete enlightenment. Wisdom gone beyond, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as the truth, where there is no deception. The mantra for wisdom gone beyond is proclaimed. Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva should learn the profound wisdom gone beyond. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration and praised the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, saying, very good. It is exactly like that. The profound wisdom gone beyond should be practiced exactly as you have said, and then the Bodhisattvas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the whole gathering, and the world with its gods, men, and gods and spirits, their hearts full of joy, praised the words of the Blessed One. So as a noble Lord is within the essence of the wisdom gone beyond.
제 셰바 뭐 신인지만에 있나요? 굴롱 선바사보고 생고고 여봤다. 제 인지만에 있나요? 아니 라센 수수 라면 선바 뭐도 마셔봐. 신대고 선바지 선바 자주 선바지 되지. 아니 중화이나 아니 최대 산 저버지 최 산주 남주를 봤을 때다. 양면치 오늘 누구여래 손
Thank you. We have now finished these prayers, the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha and the Prajna Paramita Hridaya, the Heart Sutra. And now we turn our attention to the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, whether teaching or listening. In order for this to become authentic Mahayana Dharma, the foundation must be in place. And in the Mahayana Dharma, the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, the stages and progression of the training is fundamental. It is the very foundation. Now, for the teacher, it is essential that the proper motivation be set. For the listener, this is necessary as well. It is essential that one's mind not remain encumbered with selfish ends in mind, but rather conjoin its effort to the well-being of others. And when this is the case, then when this motivation is in place, then the Dharma becomes the authentic Dharma. It is so it is the first step to ascertainment is to listen.
Samba 가서 치고도 아니 곰 가서 지냐고도 다서 라네 치중 가서 저기네 겹투야 쳐도 아니 소소도 열에서.
Thank you. Now, if one has listened, then one has the measure to begin the process of contemplation and meditation.
제가 이들다 터벌하는 거나 다 간다. 터벌하는 수준 타도요 말해서 가서 제가 있나요? 아니 얘기 터벌다 징수세야 더다 터벌 망타서다 나 터벌 지금 했는데 구능 상다요. 터벌 가서 상하여가 있나요? 아니 대전지 드라마 아니 쌈 제만 제바지도 제공체 망하여 그러와 제가 네 터벌 자체야 돼. 대체 뭐래서
Thank you. Now there's no limit to the bounds of listening. I need no more. There's no such moment. The more one listens, the greater one's powers of examination and analysis are in the end.
또 세상 아주 벤젤로산 취진 스페셜로스에서도 야마바 기계노와 야마바 용지 벤젤로산 취진 그 코랑 이남나 안제rum지 코랑 롱지 템버레스 그때 벌써나 랑다 셴나 펜베치도스 랑스 랑나 셴 펜베치 töbe 모바 미체데스 된 tö바생다 디송삼데 모메아데 콜 아주 쭉좀 세저로 같은 데나지 말레스 töbe 모바생데 체주 거두이네 요 말레스 töbe 몸세데 요 말레스 아니 매 가르나 사수미베 아니 장주 생활도 저 있나양 아니 처벌 왜냐면 남이 열에서 되는지 롱temper에서
Ora, sa chula nebe Jiangshi Simba Nizu Mutune ni Tude Yore Yamina sa Sumba. Tambuda niba Mare Sumba.
Sumba 담은이가 이해 그러와. Sumba 내가 있나양 아니 처벌 유마지고 남이 열에서
the tutor to the fifth Dalai Lama, Lozan Shuzin, said this, related this scriptural antidote. In order to benefit both self and others, allow no sense of satisfaction or quenched thirst to follow your practice of listening. More listening, no quenching, no satisfaction, no satisfying the endless need for listening. And it is, he continued, the case that the bodhisattvas who have achieved the third bodhisattva ground continue uninterruptedly the practice of listening.
다 근데 이게 다 말한저 다 나시 진 tö바 체고 열에 tö바 체디 아니 다 대상 이유 말한저 다 수수 가사로 가다를 초도매 다 간지 기부랑 진 다수 공부 수수 감도 넣어 근데 간지 지어봐 이나양 아니 말한저 다 tö바 침마신 받았지 아니 tö바 지롱매 받아 근데 아니 양 가시 즉 수수기 지 땅이 tö바 이 전에 팽기 말에 tö바 지는 게 연구 말했으면 수수 뭔가요 근데 전에 아니 tö바 나 간지 tö바 맞지 맞지 그것도 달랐다는 게요 말해서
We too must listen so that later when we practice we are able to achieve something like a consummation to that practice. And any estimation of the competence and ability of an individual, whether they are competent or less competent, of the greatest level of competence or less, depends upon this preparation through listening. And so there should be no opportunity. Rather, one should not allow oneself to think, I have no time to listen, or if I listen, no benefit will follow from listening. One should not think in this way.
뭐에 나 배나마도 배도 차샤바 이나스 아니 배나마도 다 엄마가 배 가르스다 아주 심지에도 배샤바는 심지 수수고 류 또다 숨어도 전에 배나 따도 랑다 루도들이 여바이나 수수수고 수국이 니베기 또다 때네 아니 수수고 잘라 지금 기투고 열어왔어 기투고도 되나 신가나도 공부를 우리 가수는 빠르게 수수수 간다 찍고 연구 말때 공부 넣어 봐 넣어 망치 도를 공부 들려 봐 듣는 제도 공부 교 띄워 되는 수 빠져 되려 간다 저가 치는 냐면 지도를 해서 냐면 제국을 지도를 해서
Now, for example, take the illustration of several animals. For instance, a horse, an elephant, a sheep. One can burden them such that they are able to carry the load, but each is able to carry more or less than the other, and that just depends on the natural strength of the animal. And so it is with the incisiveness of the listener. A more incisive listener is able to achieve more in the practice. Less incisive listener, less. So one must listen incisively and practice in accordance, and is able to practice in accordance.
이네 수수 터바치스 터바 되중비 셔럽생이다 뭐 터베 되는지 아니 되중비 셔럽생이다 근데 지금 뭐지 신나냐고 요즘 되게 도서
Now, I think it would be valuable to describe how it is that the wisdom of ascertainment follows from listening.
딱 하나 펴봤어요. 단단하도 단단 쳐도 딱 쳐도 지난 펴가 망고 열어. 그냥 먼저 단단 람림도 펴봐도 되는 오늘 따와 있는 한부 신이기 때문에 랑이 녀버로 녀니 아니 펴봐들라 아니 펴시. 펴베를 될 때문에 아니 랑이 밖에 람림이 딱 나로 단다로 랑이 직 샘나도 코어도 립디 아니 딜라 the quality same to a similar that to you sharps. What is that relation?
Now, when one listens to the Dharma, one may listen to any number of things, but when one is listening to the Dharma, for instance, attending to the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, which will be presented by a spiritual mentor. So at the moment that one is listening to this, the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, presented by the mentor, as one is listening, that is the practice of listening. But as one becomes aware of the content of what is presented and grows familiar to the point of understanding the content, that understanding of the content of what is presented is the wisdom arising from listening, and this you must understand.
Then Dramita was that data what the Dramita was in to this Suba Mangujorwa. Chetan today you do some of that Dramita was in the Timbi. That Dramita was Timbi, Lung in it, and it pays a law in it, the digital Tani, and the Suzuki Semna, and the Dramita was in Tandaros, that other Dramita was Tunjito Sharne, the Tuism Dajito Sharne. And the one that Damita race and 20 Lola Sharma Chadu, or the day shiny the lani that to you share ups and it is Coco your resonance.
Now, to make a particular example of a listener listening to a presentation on the impermanence of sound, the topic itself of the impermanence of sound is the subject of considerable debate between the various philosophical schools. In any case, when this is being presented as the impermanence of sound through scriptural citation, or one is reading this, the mind will encounter a term generality which conveys sound is impermanent. Based upon this term generality, sound is impermanent, an idea, a concept of impermanent sound is understood by the mind. That concept of impermanent sound understood by the mind is the wisdom arising from listening in this particular case.
Boy, that days to turn the days some of the days. Suzuki, same gig, not to share a Kesha, some years, Suzuki. Say to some such nigger was.
Now, if one listens and this awareness of the meaning of what is presented is ascertained, and one is self-aware of this ascertainment, then one can think, this understanding arose in me.
that the order to Jung Chevala ten Kariki Risna, that Kariki Gugurisna, and some Jung Sherabs and some Jung Sherabs and the Kiabu, some Jung Sherabs and the Tube, Tundi, and the Ragi Pamashaba, the Villa Young, Chembagi, Yanju, and Tamba, Majibachin, Teni, and Jebachin, to you, Lung, Suzuki, Loway, Tuba in a delay, Jebachin, and Jella, Yavanita. Oh, Dramita, Reda, Harishini, you say some standard, you say the summer time, and go kitchen or kitchen by Mita, you do some, you say some Lotan, and so the Yavani, Topas to a Yavani, that seems there's some yet. You say Yar sound cheaper, that seems your. Some Lotan, that somebody 20 the ranking Yavani, there's quarter in the. And some Jungs what the league or
from the wisdom arising from listening, how is the wisdom arising from contemplation or thought to follow it? When one has comprehended the meaning of what is presented, and one gains this through listening, then repeatedly comprehended, drawing that to mind again and again, and then applying an analysis to it. So when one has listened or one has heard, and one has comprehended the meaning of what one has listened to or heard. And then, in order to make that a strong comprehension, for instance, sound is impermanent. Now, why is it impermanent? Well, sound is momentary. Anything that is momentary is necessarily impermanent. Now, with the meaning one has heard, one applies reason and logic to that again and again. So comprehension develops. Now, when one hears sound is impermanent, and then analyzes this, and through analysis comes to a recognition is the inferential cognition of the impermanence of sound. From the wisdom arising from contemplation, how is the wisdom arising from meditation brought to follow it? One considers the meaning of what one has ascertained, and that which is the wisdom arising from contemplation, but doesn't leave it there, but analysis to it again. But this analysis is the analysis that should give way to an experiential comprehension, and therefore it does not require reason and logic, but rather the reason and logic is in place, and one endeavors to generate a direct experience of the truth of the impermanence of sound. And so from the wisdom arising from listening and the wisdom arising from contemplation that follows it, and the comprehension of the meaning, when is like directly perceiving some object, then that is the mind of wisdom, that is the mind, or rather the wisdom arising from meditation. Now, if you were to say, now show this wisdom arising from contemplation, you would present the samadhi shamatha and vipassana simultaneous. In the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, or for the individual training in bodhicitta, or training in penetrating insight into emptiness, the progression through the paths of the Mahayana, beginning with the path of accumulation. During the path of accumulation, progresses to the path of preparation and trains in the penetrating insight into emptiness. During this path, the individual will be developing the wisdom arising from contemplation. And following this, with the achievement of the path of seeing, this individual has penetrating insight into emptiness. This individual has achieved shamatha, hasn't she? And this is meditative equipoise, meditative equilibrium. And thereby, this individual has So here are these three: listening, contemplation, and meditation. Now, each individual, each of you may progress in your training and identify each moment as an instance of this. This is an instance of the wisdom arising from listening. This is an instance of this. This is an instance of this. And so listening, continuing to listen, or you are speaking, you may identify these.
당연히 계산이 이게 저원이 되게 처럼 이제 지다처럼 줄을 시 최님에서 시베스 좀도 지다처럼 수요세죠. 저원이 되게 줄을 저원이 되게 줄을 이제 지다처럼 줄을 시 최님에서 시베스 좀도 지다처럼 줄을 담아먹을 이런 것들 하려는 가서 숨을 어디지. 나 최님에서 시베스 수요세다. 최님시 지다처럼 수요세죠.
Now we will turn our attention back to the text itself, the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. And here we have arrived at the section, how to listen and explain the teachings endowed with the two greatnesses. And this section has three further subsections: how to listen to a teaching in which both the teaching, contemplating the benefits of hearing the teaching, developing reverence. Actually listen has its own three subsections, and we turn our attention to these.
아니버 최다 최마와는 뭐게 왔어. 다수적인 얘기 최대단의 최마와는 이제 마구가 내가 고바치와 전부체 왔어. 어사비 디가는 다시 아무들은 다스 디가는 누구야 그래서 이거 최대죠.
Now here are these three sections: contemplating the benefits of hearing the teaching, developing reverence for the teaching and the instruction, and how to actually listen. We turn our attention to this: developing reverence for the teacher, the teaching and the instructor.
Oh yeah, that is this is that is something that the rich monala neither Chenmo or Dujabani saying good dollars. Chenmo Cheba Chawani Sanjay Dawar Teller Dushi Case or do Sanjay the Suzu Chuni Babu. Some look Kulung Chetan, Sungi or Resort City. Saying good dollars. Yes. To be patient, such a way to say, what such a big to what you must to make the good. One of the digital oh, yeah, all the size of all the training with the years of
Now we begin here on page 57, developing reverence for the teaching and the instructor. The Sutra of Sittikarva says, listen to the teachings with one pointed faith and respect. Do not censor or deride the speaker. Honor your instructors. Develop the idea that they are like a Buddha. Here is a description.
차 간대지기 요바 나지 아니 최마고 대양 아니 방에다 좀 두시 찍고샤 아니 얘도 꾸디되게 아니 채워이나 아니 라마다 좀 최예먹이 표현 더가 요래들이 수고요래서
What does this say? What are we to do based upon this? The lesson is the teacher, the Buddha Shakyamuni, and one would pay the Buddha Shakyamuni the deepest honor and respect. One should perceive the spiritual mentor teaching the Dharma as the Buddha, no different from the Buddha, and deserving of the very same veneration and respect. And when this is done, when this veneration and respect is paid to the teacher of the Buddha Dharma, then the astounding benefits that follow from listening will be experienced by the listener.
What is that? That is our that is that okay. The 장주스가 장사스를 좀 봐라. 장주스를 사스. 하고 통행 통화라서 상사. 자 디나는 반대송은 군이 유모 매바당 최마와 내가 일을 미쳐서 송과 따르는 연구를 해서 다 제가 군이 유모 매바스다. 군이 유모 매바다 아니 최마와 아니 내가 일을 미쳐서 최님바스는 요래스 다 디트다 내가 아니 군이 유모 매바스게 되게
내가
전달들이 내가들이 나세요. 내가 최모는 내가 미치를 보냈어. 내가 일을 미치를 보내는 예송해서.
다니 롱디 양겹식 장르지.
그런 데도 있지.
데라면 좋아.
요요.
그래.
요 대구대도.
그래.
대지도 장사래서.
장사래서. 어도.
장사래서. 뭐 군이 유모 매바당 최마와 내가 일을 미치를 보내 연구됐어.
야.
내가 이제 시작하고.
Okay, so that describes the intention and the listener, doesn't it? And now the text continues thus, as this says, view the instructor as being like a Buddha, eliminate disrespect, honor him or her with homage and goods by offering a lion throne and the like. And following this, also as the Bodhisattva levels set forth, the Bodhisattva levels composed by Arya Sangha, listen without the afflictions of arrogance and contempt, and without bringing to mind the 5 conditions, and without. We'll describe these in a moment.
Oh, yeah, that is not the country's to Tanga to Javaina. That they like Canberra the Tewasi. Canberra the Tewasi. And it is Niambasi. And a good teacher was outside the year. Sishu Chevache, Metro was it. Jesu Grubas. Alle di banji yiwa due yi all the chazawadi mai ko ne nyen ko reso.
And these follow here. The enumeration follows. Being free from arrogance means to listen with the following 6 attributes: listening at an appropriate time, showing homage, showing deference, argue.
Oh, yeah, that ambo Canberra Chewa Sedi, Canberra Chewa Sedi, and 2 days in 2 days member so the 2 members that are to conduct direct to Chewa member Sedi. In a daughter, Corona no Lama 2 days in 2 days member. So the 3rd unit that under Suzuki Chu Yambadi and 2 members, 2 members. 아니 수수기 최슈에디 라마기 간다 최신이기 라마기 투 대부 여바 아니 거기에 직한 라마는 뒤주 여바 따든지 최년바 세저로 어디든지 고기 열었어 라마는 뒤주 매바다 라마 메디어들 여바 있는 아니 최디랑 배가다 대바 강연진 최슈기요 말해서 어디 쓴 거래서
Being free from arrogance is first described as having this attribute of listening at an appropriate time. Now, when one is listening to the Dharma, when one requests the Dharma and then listens, this should be coordinated. Spiritual mentor doesn't have time, or it is an inconvenient time, then that is not the proper time to listen to the Dharma.
Oh, 이게 배도 간데스요 배도 저 슈베이는 오마 따디오로 가서 가던 거 기시 보도 왔어. 저 돈데 버도 너마시 보도 여러와. 기시 보도가 아니 그런 공부저를 까간 거 봤어. 공부하는 시간이 그런 게 답에 차배만 몰로 아니 배제도 야마 고리는 슈디도 아니 그런 데 잘해 먹고난 배제만 몰로 해서 원하는 운용 그래서 그 남아 투도 매버도 하마고 하지 아니 되는 전화로 우주진 최시 쇼란 보도 공부 처음에 아니 배 가다 공부도 랑 공부 처음에 저만하지 대론 실로마 대론 자바긴 대론들이 좋아했어 제단들이 그 수술을 내버치고 사고 대전에 아니 최교수 년 봤으니까 배들이 열에서
아니 좀 그래서 좀 이해를 보다 아니 슈슈슈브로 되는 데이터
보도 그는 동대문 뒤즈거든 동대문 기도도와 너무 일단 보도 그는 미시바기 그는 고박이 내가 먹어지 최 부디스 야만 딕대요라 내가 먹어지 빼자 몰라 아니 그는 딕 내가 딸래가 원나디요 오늘도 최슈기지 걸 우주긴 최슈에서 그 뒤에서 많이 버 최슈가 제가 보도 오바총 넘어서는 아니 그런 저 나에 약간 자바긴 치료만 비셔 어디에
Now, for example, from Tomba's student Potoa was at Katang Monastery, and there he had a great deal of work. He was reading scriptures and preparing a text, and so there was a great deal of work. And he was working, and it caused him to have a headache, and so he had a headache. And then one of his students, while he was working, came and pressed him for instruction. And Potoa became very angry and chased him out with a stick and reprimanded him harshly. And so one will be reprimanded harshly if one isn't aware of the proper time.
제가 때 뒤에서 당보도 직송아 뒤에서 년바 센세 다리는 이바들라 kurdi cheba sendo ya da kurdi cheba sende ngana da kurdi cheba sende ngana da lama la cha sewa da ane lama pidu rangi kushe pini ya lama da ane lama ki sishu
And the second is showing homage. Showing homage is to prostrate for the teacher, to pay respects to the teacher, to rise when the teacher arrives, and to provide service to the teacher.
그래서 kurdi cheba 다 되어도 가도 kurdi cheba sishu cheba sende ya da sishu cheba sende da sishu cheba sende da lama ki page de suzu lama ki shela pe wada namsa siwada ani ji page lama ki shabji shuwa da kurdi cheba sende ni shara cheba me do.
And then next follows showing deference, and showing deference and showing homage are more or less the same. There's no significant difference between the two, but to serve food to the teacher, to help them with what they're wearing, these things are forms of showing deference.
다가다 분이 개발도 거기서 라마 군예 바다 아니 집어 샵초라 소가 부디 제바자 라마 시슈 제바 라메 된다라는 수주고 집어게 자와도 바다 아니 바게 단다 로바도 제바 거리는 디기디 시슈 제바 건지도 어디지 제발 제라는 집어도 알레
디키바디 하겠지 있으면지
단 가다디 꾸디 제바 생도 다 꾸디 제바 세데 먼저 라마는 집어게 단다 지금 군예보다 샤프바로 소바스도 되잖아. 다 시슈 제바 세데 라맹지도 자와도 봤어. 라맹지도 수주고 집어게 라맹이 내가 되는 로바 제바다 되는 제바데 시슈 제바 세도 어디지
So again, for the difference between showing homage and showing deference, which is very slight, showing homage would be to respectfully wash the feet or so of the teacher, whereas showing deference would be to them in the service of whatever their ends are, whatever work they have to do to assist in that.
라면 자와주고라 아니 배 마가와 맞아 그다 통한 제바 아니 라면 자와주고라 가제 공도 맞아 봐서 가시 또시 제바 세들.
And not being resentful is to not dislike the work that one is assigned by the teacher, to voluntarily take it up, not to resent whatever is required by the teacher.
예, 다른 내가 봐도 랭감 미쳐왔어. 랭감 미쳐고도 독수도 랭감 미쳐왔어. 난 랭감 미쳐왔어. 내려도나 라마 미쳐 세번에서 최마와를 캐스 미쳐 가서 최라 지금 다디 최야가를 누가서 뒤체는 뒤마디도 되게 잡아도 라마나야 아니 직박에 지금 개수 맞아봤다. 개수 맞아봐서 되자마자 어떤 개수 맞아봐는 되게 달라마는 개수 간다 라마는 동중 맞아봐다. 개수 맞아봐 제바디 아니 내가 미쳐도 된다셔. 어디 가서 모르겠어.
Practicing rather is to not disdain, deprecate, or classify what one is learning from the spiritual mentor as better or worse. It is to be free from condescension of any kind.
캐수 미제버 소디 니모도 저와 이사 내가 일을 미제바니 내 수림 녀바다 리마와 다서 제 녀바다 친구 녀바다 친구 친구 년바다가 친구가 미년바 마와서 아니 미년바 마와 되는 미년도 년바 메트로와스 어디 지들잖아 내가 년바서 내가 미년바서 도 어디 지도 된다는 사람들은 지금
Being free from contempt means to respect the teaching and the one who gives it and not to belittle these two. Not bringing to mind the five conditions is described here in the root text itself, what that means. Not bringing to mind the five conditions has fallen from ethical discipline. There's one. Is of poor lineage. There's another. Has an unattractive physical appearance. There's another. Is inarticulate. There's the fourth. Or speaks harshly and unpleasantly. That's the fifth. So here in the root text, not bringing to mind the five conditions are shown here.
Pena pena umang Lamrim yubadi tadana Lamrim namrula sanjoni pabonga yorwa digi lama di disir jing gelek also korangi ane karsina lama chik ane dis kobal nora chongje ane derisi ane korangi di jamba tamdo nyembu medi jamba ane Lamrim sojina magu shabarwa 제일 그런 라빈 소식 똑같이 맞게 제일 그런 네 너를 하건 한 소식나는 거기 아니 그런 라빈 야야 되게 네 맞다 주름 냠바스 주름 냠바스를 라기 라마데 근데 라기 주름 껴 주름 냠게가 되게 있나요 아니 라마가 뒤시샤고 해서 니 빼비 가르스나 바본가 같은 라마 이 바본가 아니 라마 두관게 레저 생이 저와 코랑이 라마 직 아니 고베나를 데슬링 시차비 아니 코랑이 조신은 마고버지 하바라스 아니 라바 때는 코랑이 좀 라미 또버디 유로마지 유로마라 제일 코랑이 어다니 디니 둘삼 라마 조신은 고는 곰디 아니 또버지와 어디에 빼비데 요래서
So these are all explained here, but the first has fallen from ethical discipline. In the case that a student understands themselves to be of more integrity than the teacher, to be upholding ethical discipline in a way that surpasses that of the teacher. If that even were the case, it would be unacceptable to criticize the teacher. There's a story to illustrate the importance of this. Pavonka Rinpoche's teacher, Drupkang Gelek Gyatso, it was at the monastery. A problem arose, and Pavonka Rinpoche neglected out of slighting his teacher, neglected to properly include him in the merit field, and the ascertainment of the graded stages of the path was hindered by neglecting to include his teacher Gelek Gyatso. And then when Pavonka Rinpoche recognized his mistake and included Gelek Gyatso despite his reservation, ascertainment of the stages of the path occurred.
Lama jiyor dati Quran tsen diya utrema song. Da ina Quran ki karichir na Quran ki lama di mazo di pabo songi doa pazi. 파고송이죠. 그래서 그런 파고송이 이제도 그런 도구로 한 최시에 라마 판에서 배워. 라마 배우면서 뭐 라마 배도 그런 라마를 교고 있는 그런 미기래. 제발 때네 아니 그런 라마 찾아서 봐. 제일 라마 밑 수준을 조회장 그런 최시에 찾아서 제일 그래야지 라마들 잘. 근데 라마들 잘. 라마들 전에서만 대충 많이 우리도 저 라마서 손도 봐. 대신은 저는 통마 좀 그게 저기서 하고 저기서 어디 제발 때는 그런 게 부진지는 부진지를 미 교육이죠. 어디 미기 어디 그런 라마나 통주쇼네 되게 개체는 미 들어도 어디를 다들 또 부진의 체험이 테마서
The second point, not to bring to mind the five conditions means to cast away the thought. The second thought is the thought of poor lineage. To think that one's spiritual mentor is of lower status, and then to have disdain for them and condescend and be condescending is unacceptable. Cause the decline in any realizations one has. And so there's a story from Drupsha Gyatso. There's a story of a Mahasiddha, an adept who was attending a teaching, and he was of a superior class to his spiritual mentor, and he attended the teaching of his spiritual mentor and was there in a big crowd, and this was his spiritual mentor arrived, and because he disdained the lower status of the spiritual mentor, when the teacher arrived, he didn't rise and pay any respect to him. And so after the teaching, when this Siddha went to see the teacher said, when I arrived, you didn't show any respect for me. And the adept said, I didn't see you. And so he lied to his teacher. And as a result of that lie, his vision was impaired.
아니 집에 간다를 직수 년바로 가리유나 양고기 아니 라면 뒤시를 샤냐니 간다 뒤쳐버는 것도야 그쪽으로 선 계수잖아 아니 한랑 또 거기야 누구래서 차진이 봤어 차진이 봤어 수미 봤어 그 뭐야 오늘 마상와 the best or just
What page did I show?
57.
I lost the page. Okay. And the third has an attractive physical appearance. There should be no concern for the appearance, the faculties, the supposed faculties, whether they appear to be great or not of the spiritual mentor. One should not criticize or deprecate the spiritual mentor on account of that.
Oh yeah. 아니 송나야고 매봐 어디데 있나야 아니 간다랑이 많이면 거의 배 책임 보면도 배 즉주부시도 사면이 주 많이 받을 제야 말해서
is inarticulate. Not bringing to mind the five conditions means to cast away this fourth thought. The spiritual mentor is inarticulate. Don't think that it's appropriate to criticize a teacher because they aren't sufficiently eloquent or they are seemingly crude.
Oh yeah, that's in 지금 미님을 마와서다 간다 최신의 년부시에보라 그래서 년부시 마신바 아니 데레다 아니 지 간다 밖에 기계는 차이만 상황다 간다 데레 돈은 직시에 마토바다 아니 지금 년부 마마토가 데레 이바이나야 아니 라기다 이베 년부 민두스 아니 얘기 매선 데레 샤요 말해서
And the fifth, or speaks harshly and unpleasantly. The spiritual mentor seems to speak in a way that isn't pleasant, and one shouldn't think, oh, this spiritual mentor isn't qualified to speak. They can't speak in a pleasant manner.
어두시다 간다네 나 미셔서 다 라마라지 라메기 간다 버거 링마와다 쳇스 버거 차지냐 봐 수냐 봐 아니 지 츠두냐 봐 지 마와 케바 메바 이나야 아니 라기 딱 간다 최냐게 간다라 되게 꾸룽 유베 토네 아니 많이 마시네 간다 수수기 최냐베 두시 꾸룽 상보지 토네 년토고 년무 그래 아니 간다 버거 되게 지금랑이 일을 맡아봐도 이마이나야 아니 맞아봐 빠짐셔도 되지요 말해서
On account of the low status of the teacher, their want of physical handsomeness or beauty, their ineloquence, on any of these accounts, to take these as reason not to listen attentively is inappropriate. In any case, one must listen with a consistently respectful attitude.
어두시다 간다 대간다 권어로 맡아봐지 간다 양직 밖에 직수수기 밖에다 간다 남한테 간다 수수 도메기 꾸룽이 삼로 땅땅 세고 얼마도 양직 책 두자 신는 년거를 가르 누가 지내 년거를 세들이 권한 때 권한 때에 년가 요래서
There is no misunderstanding in this description of the proper way to attend to, listen to a spiritual mentor. It isn't to tolerate all sorts of crudeness and profanity, but rather to be aware that the proper attitude for encounter with the spiritual mentor is the proper attitude of the student himself or herself.
세상 땅에 거기 이 단다치 막 둥그레스 양이 간다 최신이게 그 누가 시험을 세만년에 시험을 했는데 그저 말했지 신이 인바이나야 꾸룽 단다치 이 꾸룽 요반하지 신이 꾸룽 되도 투바다 와는 둥그레스
Now, in the sections to come, the proper intention of the instructor and the qualities the instructor should have will be described. And so here we're not saying that one should listen to all sorts of crudeness and profanity and tolerate that, but rather one should be aware of intention and the respect that one as listener should conform to.
Oh yeah, that big sounds like. 아니 되게 잘하지. 다들은 정말 인중을 이스. 아주만한 인주 좀 받다. 뭐 들라네 가르치고 그랬으나 다 이시 거래서. 인중을 이스 네 계진료 이교순 보다推荐 시도 때 봐서 어디서 어디서.
And now with that, the second section, developing reverence for the teaching and the instructor, is completed. Now we look to the third section. This section has its own two sections, abandoning the three faults of a vessel and relying on the six ideas.
Oh yeah, this is one. Oh yeah, that the dinner that the 교순 봉화서 that 계신 것이다 그래서 네 교순 봉화서 때 담보 네 교순의 가래에서나 아니 네 카보바스 네 카보바스 아니 네 지마지 다보스 아니 네 샤브두와스 남들나는 그거랑 네 와서 여기 왜 이제 보면은 그거랑 그것도 세웁니다. 뇌야. 뇌 카보거든. 이나는 또 뒤습니다. 시에서다. 당고는 뇌 카보거든 지발에도 딱 같이 해서 이제 미상만 방어하다. 어디 간데 세우라면 거기도 가지 않습니까? 연결하자면 나비
Now, these abandoning the three faults of the vessel is very important. It is crucial, and a vessel might have the following three faults. As it appears in this root text, it's a bit unclear. There's greater clarity in liberation in the palm of your hand, so we will look at that. Here, what is written is being upside down, or though held right side up, being dirty, or though clean, having a leaky bottom.
Pasidi, ne kaba buna kariyores ne kapuna dinana chu sambu kazuluna yang, ani ne nam dugumarwas ne nam dugumare. Tena chala lusa ne de sel phobata was imbaina ko kabudi jana ke ko nam chala yang lusa la marwa. Odina shin ne kabu jana dinana chala chu madro na shin manam tanda page chu ni du zamba chu ni se sa de de ani amdo chune na chune mate ba se samlo sheba ta chune yi
The upside down vessel, if you have a vessel and it's upside down, no matter the fresh water you pour, it won't collect in the vessel. If it's a gold cup and it's upside down, it makes no difference. Nothing will accumulate in the vessel because it's upside down. And likewise, a listener comes to the place where the Dharma is taught, and they take a seat there, and then their mind is swiftly taken away to, and the individual has no concentration. And so this is no different from being an upside down vessel and unable to receive.
Oh yeah, that's you did the now dedan the condition is not the symbol chu now dedan condition Rida Dala Chabana is Rida, when I was a Simjir Shah, the Rida Yorwa. The Zugu Dragimu, Kodutama, and Sim, but say to the Dal Chan, Shendakin, Tonguyo Maris, to the Tila, and Suzuki saying, Mombata, Zuleva in a Kodu, Dal Chan, and in Kandashimba, Maton, or the Najiji, and Samba Shimbak, no Pakan, Kanda Sim, but now. Any
Then how does one direct their attention when they're listening? The proper way to do it, metaphorically, one ought to listen with the alertness of a deer that has heard a sound and is listening with the full force of their concentration to that sound. Their concentration is so intense and all-consuming as they turn their attention to the sound that they've heard, that anything else in their surroundings that they might have been aware of, they won't be. For instance, hunters might come and they are so wrapped in attention to the sound that they had heard that they don't even they are unaware of the hunter. One should listen with this sort of intense alertness, single-pointed concentration.
Oh yeah, that is no couple of the main answer. That no couple of my budget. I am never kaya down say you cut down the cut number shy away in a yansa. Near cup. My New cut down the shy in a tea nandu, and it nearly nandu not any chichala two daughter. And Miss Sound did look the shy shavina, and in an Angela Shimba said, oh, near color yaboka lu in a young. And Pemato Chagger was Pemato Chagger, now Chichala Kandijulu in a young Pemato Chagger was. Then I see running nowadays, same the body new cut down the Yakaya 7 Yamba Kanshijina, young Kulung Yamena, Kulung the Kulung to Sangumena, 아니야 잘라디가 돌아다니는 거 왔어. 대나시 밖에 네 세번 가지 세번 나시 꿀릉대야 상호가 개정을 해서
Second, though held right side up, this fault of the vessel, though held right side up, being dirty. Now the vessel is right side up and can hold contents, but it's contaminated. It's unclean inside the surface. So if food is put inside this vessel, then the food becomes contaminated. That is to say, the food then becomes it loses its value as it has become contaminated. So too, when listening, if the intention isn't constructive, then the content value lose their constructiveness because the intention to begin with has contaminated it.
꿀릉 상호매로 꿀릉 연바스기 다다 가르치 백 한대로 시작을 꿀릉 연바스에 되는데 랑게 끝나 직 소소고 꿀릉 나랑에 최대 년진 밀바 시에고 삼삼지 꿀릉 직 요구를 했어. 아니야 지금 백 개바체는 백 혼줄레 백아 더바 망아요 나 개바 이스 되게 영향 지도를 최터바싱에 여러 왔어. porque tanto de niembo raya chido le han thoba che ngurwas ta kanda thanda dodo susurang de yiji susu thanda chedi dogo tamsung thanda cho khari niemba imba inaya tiya randu yiji lo shorwale shorwa indu am kokunu niemba chagi reson.
Now, what would be the improper intention that would contaminate the contents that one has heard? That would be, there are various forms, but that would be, for instance, the intention to listen to the Dharma so that one has something that flashy to go out and present to others, or the intention to become perceived by the public as more learned than others, more scholarly than others, better educated than others, or to simply wish for recognition and status as a result of having listened to the Dharma. Wherever one's motivation has become selfish, has become contaminated by an interest in status or in resources or in the like, then that is contaminating the contents.
Oye, ta kanda de kunung sambo ta nyemba singde ta kanda Lamrim shisun cheba ina de rangi che degi da cheba tiche ani de gana suzu rangla dewa tobe tanda kunung tang cheba ina ta kunung sambo mayimba kunung nyemba sida bures ta de mayimba che ani chig rangi pe sanju gisam ka de Lamrim kazu toba cheba ina toba cheba ti rangi nyamne che ga chidu yi Beshiana Pebesido yi Samado Chitanjuk Sem Simado Chevaina and the Kulum Sambos or the little cigarettes on it.
Now the difference between a constructive and a non-constructive attitude is the difference between preoccupation or an intention to turn the Buddha Dharma to one's personal ends in this life, to gain clothing, gain food, to gain a reputation, these ordinary interests, or to simply gratify oneself. Wherever these are the motivations, then the motivation is not constructive. Where the motivation is instead to listen as extensively as possible in order to have the greatest amount of fodder for true practice, to conjoin what one has heard with bodhicitta and to commit oneself to training, this is the constructive attitude.
Oh, yeah, the Sumba de Dada, ne shall no Kabuba, Maiba, no Timache, Maiba in the young, and then no the Tidima, Ogun Dena, T. Dena, and they are Pengio Mares, Kala, Kokana. 네, 나가지 자도 또 뉴스도 걸로 샤베나 보나 누나 되게 말어만 되는 거로 오 대나시 아니 네 샤브도 생기지 제가 이나야 아니 되게가 말해서
And the third fault of the vessel, though clean, having a leaky bottom. The vessel is clean and right side up, but there's a hole in the base, and so whatever one pours into it, water, amrita, nectar, whatever it is, it's
녀바 맞에 꿀롱데 두사 그런 녀바 매와 그런 상고 요바 임바 이나양 아니 랑이 퇴베 되는데 양양 배제 마주가 퇴베 심바 맞이나 아니 네 샤드와 나지지냐 뭐 드리시게 산이지 나는 제 아니 네 샤드와 지가 차기 어려서 뭐지.
And in this case, one has listened attentively, and one's motivation has been set constructively. However, following the teaching, there's no practice of recall, of recollecting the meaning of the teachings. And so with each passing day, the meaning that one has heard is lost.
어떻게 된대래 제가 나나도 간다네 숨디 빼숨세 된숨도 제가 네 빼숨디 가르네 가보고 네 주마제 네 샤드와스 다디나가 된숨디 가래 네 콜레버 된숨부디 아니 셈레버 tö벌 셈레버 때바 직세 아니 때바 대야 그 꿀롱 상보고는 때바디 니제 아니 때바 대야 템베기 셈이 tö벌 때바다 꿀롱 상보고는 때바 니기 가나야 아니 대한장 템베 맞제바 양의 양도 템바진 고마제바들라 아니 된숨 어디숨도 빼자고 그래서.
So here we have three metaphors, and then we have that is the vehicle of the metaphor, and then we have the meaning of the metaphor. And the metaphor's vehicle are these three faults of the vessel. The vessel upside down, the vessel right side up but contaminated, the vessel right side up and uncontaminated yet with a hole. And so these three applied to their meaning express this, that one may listen inattentively instead of listening inattentively like a vessel rights the vessel and listens attentively. And as one may listen attentively but have an improper motivation, like a right side vessel that is contaminated, one cleans the vessel and listens attentively and with the proper intention. And in the third case, one has proper intention, rather one is listening attentively and has proper intention, and in addition to this, one recollects, one works at recalling what one has learned.
지랑 로가 있나다 퇴가 있나다 간다랑이 되 맞아버지니 거기 간다지가 맞아버지니 그래 제대 됐어. 내하고 말했어. 갈래하고 여르데 이나양 딱 간다고 가주 수주를 제백이 돈에 가주 맞아버지야. 다시 제리 개체슈지 자기 어려서.
Now it isn't as though recalling all that one has heard or all that one has read is easy. It isn't easy by any means. It's very difficult. But insofar as one is able to, it is very constructive when it is done.
거기 딱지 탑시 저기 맞아버 쳐야 탑시 딱 한다. 약속이 전박이 그냥 하나도 지금 퇴가 된대지 퇴송 다 된대지 이상 수주기 간다 퇴배 퇴는 거 강라야 삼보 삼중디 로디 잘지 이순 양주 퇴마체 직 탑시 직제 아니야 탑시 직랑 하나도 니체였다 먼저 배나 고바도 님바이나 먼저 드링이 개개인기 빼져 튀서나 나는 건다 철안한 지내니 좀 찍기 좋아하는 찍기 렌즈 아니 간다 기계기 쉐베 뒤돌아니 수주기 드링 체니 대화단 레인지 인디치니 고 답시지 여러왔어. 나 말한서 이네 지 유기 지수 있어식이 남아. 아니 계절이가가 너 하나도 아니 저 내가 사서야 마차마서 들이 저 갈아서 사인데 사사메 되게 계절 때 용세. 아니 나도 직박에 땅이 추고 단다 직박에 땅 람리게 남샤도 거래야. 이마지가 저 살직 이숨 나는 차기 어려서
Now, what methods are there for consolidating what one has learned, consolidating one's memory of what one has heard? There are two ways. The first, one may simply follow the class with a review of what one has heard. Think to oneself, I heard this and this and this. I learned this and this and this. Now that's one valuable way to consolidate one's memory. In the morning, the instructor teaches on a topic, and then there are debate grounds outside, and in the evening, those the students who listen gather, and one proposes an argument and the rest respond, and the topic of discussion is what was the very topic that morning. In either case, it is to use the time in a 24-hour day in an effective way to reduce the amount of time one spends saying, are you done with it? Have you eaten already, et cetera, and instead review with others these sections of the treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. There are these sections, etc., and discuss them.
이제 세상 하나도 간다 즉 태와 야첨부 유바 이나양 선중글로 양양 첨부들 맞이바 이나 태바들 그 망고 제바들 양 감산 플라도 제도 그래 제나 태바 되는데 라도 와서는 태바 제비 되는데 말아야 된다는 선중이 양양 내가 선중들이 로데 내봐도 내가 망고 제네 그 공중 깨버 제국이 열었어 세상 퇴선 고수인데 태바 야첨부 유나에 뭐가 치러 보바디 마중아이나 태바 지요 된다게 팬이요 말했어 일단 보바디 야고 용어라야 태바디 구글에서 콘두숨 거두이네 딱 한달 가가지는 바 다요 말 냠도지는 거두이네 퇴베 되는데 삼중 퇴베냐 일 공중줄에 깨주고 어디지 나는 고마도 줄에 깨봤잖아요. 삼중도 고 삼중도 영화나 표중도 고 어때도 봐도 균대를 찍지 균대 차대요. 그래서 그것도 가지고 있는 저 매버진 대회는 아니 찍지도 더 팬도 말해서 그것도 있는 것도 냠도 고래서 답시수 고순대지 도선 고순 야마죠. 아니 그것도 있는 냠도 고래서 손으지
Now, when one has listened extensively, unless that memory is consolidated effectively, and it may be consolidated through the use of contemplation by thinking about it. Thinking about it works to consolidate the knowledge that one has gained through listening. If this isn't done, if there's a failure to consolidate that memory, then the meaning will be lost again. So the stage of contemplation, so that the wisdom arising from listening becomes the wisdom of arising from contemplation, is important and must be applied to what one has heard. They must be joined together so that they are mutually supportive, so that then they can give rise to the wisdom that arises from meditation. Without the wisdom arising from listening, there will be no later wisdom arising from contemplation. But then, too, without the use of contemplation, without the wisdom arising from contemplation, there's no consolidation of the wisdom arising from listening. And so there's a relationship between all of these. Therefore, one shouldn't engage in one and neglect another. They should always be used simultaneously or engaged in simultaneously. And in that way, that the wisdom arising from meditation is a result of the wisdom arising from listening, and the process of consolidating the memory through the wisdom arising from contemplation, that there is a causal relationship and they're related, will bear fruits. So they shouldn't be disconnected. They should all be brought together and used. And in the sutras, there's the scriptural basis in the sutra itself of a description of the three faults of the vessel. The Buddha Shakyamuni said, listen with rapt attention, listen single-pointedly.
Therefore, said net timajing game point thing yours. Rabdu Nyembe, and it no couple what it do yours. And the yellow smushi to summer, and it no shadow. All this losing some your lessons.
The sutra may be better translated as listen excellently with rapt attention and bear in mind consistently what one has heard. And these three, with the encouragement to listen excellently, that means to listen with the correct intention. With rapt attention is to be like a vessel that is right side up, and to recall is to be like a vessel that doesn't have a hole.
Oh yeah, that 만화도 tö바 치료자마다 아니 그 숨디야 뭐지 뭐송 아니 그 숨들 때네 아니 지그랑 게다 또 이때다 니 tö바 치다 간데 치고 유명이다 어디 숨여래 세다디 딱 간다 밖에 되게 유명한고 최 이들자마다 되게 그 숨들다 아니 밖에 세워 보고 여러 그 숨들 바빵네 아니 이게 도저 아니 다다다 Revenue, and never yellow social rabbi chase at the audit, giving the data debitum and Tobachico.
In the sutras in three phrases: listen well, thoroughly, and hold it in mind. Moreover, as the Bodhisattva level set forth, listen while wanting to understand everything, staying one-pointed, attentive, and with your mind focused, and reflecting with complete composure. Listen then in this way, which is the proper way. Separate or eliminate the faults that are likened to these three faults of the vessel, and so listen in a way that conforms to this. And so with that, we will bring an end to this class here. All right. Now, if you have any doubts or any concerns, allow me to offer the best response that I can.
Bodhisattvas on the different levels. I guess I just wanted to hear a little bit more about that, on the path of accumulation. You said I took it to mean that primarily their practice is listening. Clearly, they're not only engaging in listening, or I have to assume. And so I just wondered, what is the effective meaning of what he told us about that?
오더는데 솔랑 졸랑 어서부터 되게 가만히 제시가 되samla 이 자와소디 아니 tö바라레 이나야니 자와딜레 심베 아니 자와양 요스사레오 어디
초사 총음스도 찍고는 초사야 돼. 또 돈이 또 더 초자신도 사고와 어디 사야 돼? 조만 보여. 되게 그거 총음들 지고와 때이네 tö바디 초사 시험을 tö바디 저 도는 거 되게와 저거는 돈이도 tö바지 저 뒤지딜을 따가는 tö바지 지부 말다 되게도 내가 와 초이시 초사고 소나미 초사고 뭐 여러 어디 좀 지구하는 거다. 어떻게 열었어? 이내다 배전으로 뒤져오지. 그러나 장주 세번찌기 조선구는 양내 지역 뒤져오지. 여기는 되게 배전 쉬워졌어. 언더 뒤 더버 진보진데 그게 말했어. 처음부터 뒤져는 거로.
아니 그래서 디 존슨부터 디 tö대로 네 지부 말하는 tö대요.
tö바 마지막으로 tö바 제일 뒤져쪽으로 돼. 처음부터 지금 tö바지 뒤져쪽 어느 빼자면 미지기 그 tö바 거두지 그래. 삼중 거두기 그래. 공중 거두기 그래서나 딱 동이 도백이 자주선 동이 로변 중에 자주선거도에 동이 또 tö바보라 망체 소남내 없이 그래서 아니 저런 것도 또 삼중이 끼고 동이 도백이 제바끼리 고는 포로와 돈이 또 베기 무슨 노력이든 돈을 내려와. 또 저는 거기 놓고 돈이 또 그로 위험한 표가진 이직으로 장거다. 그래서 그 미직 양년째 두제로 빼셔야 나와서.
Right, on the path of accumulation, the bodhisattvas are engaged in other activities as well, naturally. But they are engaged in the practice of listening. And this I used to describe when is the time when when bodhisattvas are particularly involved in listening and developing the wisdom that arises from listening. Those bodhisattvas will be primarily engaged in that on the path of accumulation. But on the path of accumulation, there are other activities as well as the collections. The collections are the collections of wisdom and the collection of merit, and so there are pursuits to both of those ends, both of which are meant to further and develop and prepare an individual for penetrating insight into emptiness. So as these bodhisattvas are engaged in these preparations in the general practice of completing the accumulations, at that time, the practice of listening will be of particular importance, and there are all sorts of other activities naturally as well. It was just to say that at the time on the path of accumulation, the practice of listening and developing the wisdom arising from emptiness is a particular focus, and then when bodhisattvas develop inferential cognition based on what they have listened to through the process of contemplation, they are then mounting the second, or rather mounting the path of preparation. And so bodhisattvas at that stage on the path of preparation will be engaged especially in the practice of contemplation and developing the wisdom arising from contemplation. And then with that preparation, when penetrating insight into emptiness is had directly, are engaged in meditation and the development of wisdom from meditation. So the bodhisattvas on the path of accumulation are through faith engaged in listening, especially.
상담 결과 도서 어디에 책을 내셔도 그래서 돈이 내면 그 돈이 내면 다 삼중으로 가도 있게나 고카레 Jolamba, with Jolamba Chaka, called Dinner, called Jolamba Asla. Taco Tony Musum to copy Tango Dog, Colabara, Colamba Asla, called Langa, Lamchi, the Chiller, Prosad, Tam.
And so these are rough demarcations between the end of the path of accumulation, the beginning of the path of preparation, and the end of the path of preparation, beginning of the path of where emptiness is ascertained inferentially. Then with that arising of wisdom, an individual has moved onto the path of preparation. And when emptiness moves from an inferential cognition to direct valid pramana, direct valid cognition, then one has moved across to the path of seeing. And so there are these between the paths, and one with the direct valid cognition of emptiness becomes a seer on the path of seeing.
Thank you for teaching us. Once, my question is, once one has ascertained the teaching through direct experience, how can one practice in a way so as not to slide back or behave out of accord with that understanding?
Sans doute dundee, mosum sarne, the neighbor needs sarne, neighbor the Malaya Chedu, Karchegri, the neighbor the any liar Kayala.
Combat Kumjung Penamalo, the Kumjung get lost, the Rimbamango or Sauna. The Kumjung Bay combat Tachiba Yorwa, combat Tachiba Yore. The combat Tachima God, on the Lama Janishi Datane. Tolom Toduko Kumjung Lot Kesarwa. Tinin Tolom de Yoko Komne Koma Tam Milum Togruva. Tidu combat Tachiba. Also, Milum Todu combat Tachiba, Yoko, Korangi, Lega, Mixed Midamata. Lega Ganga Shen San, the young Jang Mogajora, or the chapel to the rest, he said. The Gomjuna did it to the middle of the tree, middle Malay, Gomjuna Dana, and a Combadi, and a young tennis. You didn't see what you were. Koganda Combadi Malaya to sing, they never chose it. That I want Mato Tollage. 제가 TV 딱 간다. 그 탑시 가리었네. 니어. 쳔바다 시시스. 쳔바 시냐고. 쳔바다 시시. 쳔바기 아니 주. 시신기 따다 되는데 제가 지고 와. 어디다 쳔바다 시시니에나 아니 그 용화다 선바 가리는 라를 말했어. 말아야 탑시 쳔바다 시시니 지고 해서
Now this may be done. Allow me to present it through the three paths. Excuse me, the five paths. We describe the consummation of one's practice, or the completion, the thorough completion of one's practice. And when one mounts the path of seeing and begins the repeated meditations that are part of the path, is the path that comes before the achievement of the final fifth path, the path of no more training. At which point everything is understood, everything is ascertained, and there's no reason, no cause for continued training. Now, up until that point, the process for stabilizing, consolidating one's memory and experience gained through the preceding paths on the path of meditation. The awareness and experience the consolidated memory of the events from the preceding paths. And so there are two methods for achieving this extension of the consolidated memory from the paths of training, and that is to apply mindfulness and vigilance. The mindfulness is the continuous grasp or the continuous holding to of the consolidated memory, and the vigilance of the quality and characteristic of that consolidated memory that is being held by mindfulness. And with through the use of mindfulness and vigilance, a continuous experience and the completion of one's training may be achieved.
That is the 5 paths. The first path is accumulation. Fifth path is no need to learn it anymore. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So what's the first two difference? What the accumulation merit and the action? What is difference? If you don't do the action, how can you accumulate the merit?
아니 솔란다 아니 졸랑기 키바르가레 페나디 아니 조로 문라와 여러와 아니 조로 메나 간데스 사기레
간데스 조로 메나 소 간데스 사기레
뭔데 조로는 아니 자와로 디들
그냥 디들 소랑 내가수 돈이 너무 최종 소년의 제 두제대 소 최종년의 제 두제 저는 내가 소 삼중을 또 지어 돈이라면 시라선 되게 땡이지 끼라와 돈이라면 시라선 땡이지 뒤 아니 슈치가 땅에 땅한다 요아도 저와 하나 때문에 뭐가 로기 미기 한다 잘라 통하나 시지 규디 저런 게 치고서 와 돈이 무슨 또 하기 자리지 얘기 남지어와 네가 저런스가 저를 남지어서 한다 돈이 무슨 또 하기 자리지 봐야 자리지가 남에서 저런스가 나서 다들 자리지에야 튀지 왜 되지어와 또 돈이 무슨 그다음에 잘라도 쓰고 있는데 주디고 그는 만들고 있는데 잘라다고 자리지에 쓰는 저런 내가 치고라와 처음 내가서 최종 시럽지 아니 대년도 초사 다 저런 내가들이 다 돈이라든지 돈이 땡이지는 시라선되게 땡이지 보라 이제 장하와 처음 내가서 땡이지 내가 제장 미치고 싶지고요 말에 저런 내가서 땡이지 제장은 땡이 장전은 돈이 무슨 또 가지고서 어쨌든 셈 고랑이 누가지 개발을 거기 거기 개발들이 여러서
On the path of accumulation, the development of wisdom arising from listening, that is the primary activity during the path of accumulation. During the path of preparation, samadhi, with attention placed on emptiness and conjoined stabilization and insight, is the primary activity. Insight with the object of meditation emptiness itself is the exercise and activity of the path of preparation. Then when there has been a penetrative insight into emptiness that is direct, as though encountering an object in the raw, then that is the path of seeing commenced. Now, the actual cause for the penetrative insight it is preparation. It is the arrangement and preparation for the penetrative insight into emptiness. Now, preceding that is the path of accumulation, which is more like a collection of the supplies required, which will then be prepared later and then give way to the penetrative insight to follow. So in the original, or rather the beginning path of arrangement, path of accumulation, what is being accumulated is accumulations. And so when that which is accumulated on the path of accumulation is then the basis for joined serenity and insight with the object emptiness itself, and the activity is endeavor to have penetrative insight into emptiness. This is the path of preparation. On the path of accumulation, there is less of the samadhi. There is less of this mental concentration on the path of accumulation. Now, it isn't as though there's just one path. There's just one path of accumulation. It's not that way. The diversity of paths of accumulation is a diversity of individuals there are. And so in the foundation vehicle of the Shravaka and the Pratyeka Buddhas, the Shravaka and the Pratyeka Buddhas move in their arhatship. They achieve arhatship, and then they move onto the paths of the Mahayana. But first they achieve their arhatship in the foundational vehicle, and they are involved in the path of accumulation. Yet at the path of accumulation, these foundation vehicle Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas such individuals who then merge from the foundation vehicle into the Mahayana vehicle have already had their penetrative insight into emptiness. Yet the other components of the path of accumulation, the other activities that are engaged in at the time of the path, which is involved in the abandonment of the obscurations and the development of other realizations, these individuals of definite lineage have their unique progression on the path of accumulation. So that's for right now. That suffices. More about that later. Now, what are the other questions?
So going back to the, thank you, Geshe-la.
Speak up, please.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Going back to the process of the wisdom of ascertainment, we talked about the arising from listening, comprehension, recollection, analysis. So I was wondering, what does analysis entail? So in so would there be observation, discussion, and like maybe even some sort of data collection, and then looking at that data to understand that impermanence of sound or whatever concept that is being taught and being listened to. So what is exactly that analysis look like?
Yeah, then 특별히 중요한 이 그래서 상중 말이다. 권슈. there. 네버디. 이던다디 딱지치네. 아니 네버니에요. 딱지치. 라 서중 케그래. 딱지치그래. 딱지치네 아니 상중 이셔케 용그래. 어디 딱지 간데스 체그래. 베나니 미타파 아니 자미타파. 인탕디. 디 자미타파 인페 네츠 맨라 망보 루루존네. 아니 드롤링 체네. 딱지 체네. 네츠 맨라와 망보 아니 루루존네. 드롤링 체네. 다 딱지 체르베 디펜나티 체체나 딱지 체 셰바디 가르레스 페나
다지 시설 그런 나오는 나시 것도 주루친 주었던 내게 내번에 여러와 지금 주었던 주어들의 체에 가서 그 내번에 여 향수도 선배는 고바 수수 지고 선배당 주어들의 뭐가지고 수수 선배는 선배 윤세 선배당 내번에 여 다지가 내번에 가 유가를 와서 퇴중 거 그래서 퇴중도 맨날 담에다가 이거 거의 제법으로 지금 말아 퇴거를 때는 제법 제배 제부대라 아니 예반이 오다 제법 제는 다 디레샤 선배나 수수수 등지기로 와 어디제나 늘 탑시만 보여다 근데 전부 양양양 순 퇴조 저도 양조 삼보다 디서 삼보다는 예반이에요 저 전해지는 예반다 아니지 탑시 전담만 보여서
Yes, it is like you said, gathering and then one person proposing something and then others responding and discussing how it is that sounds impermanent, how it occurs to each person. Sound is impermanent. That's part of that may be used as a form of analysis for developing an ascertainment of the impermanence of sound. But then one can also turn over the idea repeatedly in one's own mind without the formality of a gathering and a discussion, and simply observe, simply concentrate upon the consolidated idea of the impermanence of sound, and then turn it over repeatedly. In order to develop a different grasp of it. And so really there are many different ways that consolidate the idea, say this follows from this, just turn it over in one's own mind, such that a conviction and an apprehension arises.
Thank you, Geshe-la. In contemplating the emptiness of certain sensory objects, is it advisable to work with the sense objects that one is more attached to or less attached to? So I myself enjoy ice cream. I find very solidified in a sense, so in different parts of the scripture, I notice they talk about sight is a good object to work on with emptiness. Or here we're talking about sound today. I've been thinking about using taste, and thinking about the emptiness of taste. So just what's advisable based on one's own, in general, what's advisable? And then is there a way to connect it in some way, to what might be advisable to one's own predilections or challenges with regard to attachment to sensory objects? Thank you.
Ya dene ani tongni gomdu mandra yore da chita ani di krisa ni duyu nga yoro ani denzo la migne ani krisa ni yu nga di ani rangshingi dripe tongba ani yinsu di ani ngeba nye yore o tichike la so ani dene di yu denzo tongni gomdu yu mandra mangbo nangne yu yakshu susu la pape yu yakshu tongni toya la toya ki chedu ani yu yakshu di ani gandes damgre perna ani shungla ti konyongyo perna di zuk tenzo mone zuk la migne ani sungido ani ina ngaina di susu chakpa kese yu damne ra chakpa kese yu perna ani kyapa ngaro yoro 딱 nga di 통이 앞에 가보여 제가 아니 배체 아니 젤레기 영소를 남익네 아니 똥니 겁나 아니 배체 아니 그래서 아니 뉴버테스 여기를 대라 아니 제가 아니 조기요래 아니 자요래 지요래 라서 뭐뭐요래 그래서 나 아니 처음에 나네 다디 똥니 똥시 가래 그나 아니 디마제 소소 la pape 아니 도차 케이스 유 슈첼 몽보요래 제사 아니 소소 미면라 아니 감다 메발라 라 미그네 공수단 동시 면라 된데 요소래 제사 가래라
제가 제바치를 스무 땅을 대화레스 잡으시지 아니 제가 이게 아니 저기 랭까지 계란이 겹사샤스 이제 그때는 계란이 대바스가 동반이 수수 로고 메둥토네 요 고매저와 제가 대가나 연구를 했어 네 다다나 먼저 지당이 단답변의 셰르님부터 있는 동반이 시류 담보 수글러미니 동반이 시고해디 수글러미니 동반 따에 데스칼레카가 요랬어 되기 전에 수 담보샤고 그랬어 직접 어서 숨으려나 딱 뒤에 수바들은 수수고 공부 거슈치에 유네 그냥 먼저 빅 매겨지나 수글러미니 동반이 끼기 말와 그 담보를 수도 그 수글러미 두 말와 암저 매겨지나 달미 두 말와 딱 제일 매겨지나 롤미 두 말와 주물미 두 말와 공부가 개발직도 왔어 공부가 개발될 돈에 아니 수수고야 그러나 가시 나의 공부 숙침부 때발 때는 다 들리는 고매요 가시 타요 고주고 전체적으로디 계란을 내려오는 시간을 레스 도치다 동원이 간다 미포의 수수의 셈비 제바시도 수수 되버시니까 제가 있는데 약고 요레스 이 숨쉬려서 야 디네 근데 저기 당부도 제일 내주시죠
너는 저거라 얘는 지단이 동시 유 야슈데 간데스니 당거래
제가 동시 유야슈는 다 간다 제를 보이다 뭐 속디 말한도 미 망쇼 배제다 미 배제다 뭐 속을 잡아 일단 동반이 고매데 디스 갈래 카가요 속을 미네 동반이 또단데야 고쳐나 심하지 없어는 지금도 두고 일단 속 당고 샤르스 좀 내리고 두샤도 다디나 신야 수수고 공부 더네 그냥 수수 들어가서들이 용기를 왔어 이렇게 봐요 말해서 속을 따라지 않고 자야 그래서 그래서 그러는 속 당고 샤요
Yours is a thoughtful question that comes from and so you've also supplied some half answers, partial answers in your question. So it was a thoughtful. And so yes, there may be a way to proceed that you suit to your own disposition or your own interest. And so that being said, however, in the Prajnaparamita Hridaya, the Heart Sutra, there it says form is empty. Of the sense objects, form is presented first, and it's presented first because vision is the sharpest of our faculties, and our constant engagement with visual form through vision creates a very solid or rather difficult to see the emptiness of form, and so it is presented first. Now, each person has each person has different strengths in their faculties. Most of us have in common a strong, powerful vision, but the blind aren't encountering visual forms, and so they might not use visual form as a basis for their meditation on emptiness, and the deaf aren't hearing sound, so they may not use sound, and and those who don't have a strong gustatory faculty, taste, may not use flavor, but if they do, then may use flavor. And then the olfactory sense, those who have a strong olfactory sense may use that for their basis of emptiness meditation. And then those who have a strong somatosensory faculty may use the texture and the rest. So really, one can examine one's own faculties, sensory faculty, and one's own interest, and take a basis for emptiness meditation from that. But it is the case that in the Prajnaparamita, form is given first and is said to be empty, and that vision is our powerful faculty, and we all have that in common. Most of us have that in common, and so visual forms are very solid and difficult to realize in their empty state. However, if those very solid visual forms are perceived in their empty state, then because of the solidness of vision in the power of our faculty of vision, then the other forms, the other faculties, gustatory, etc., will naturally be implied in the realization that occurred with the basis of form. And so for that reason, form is very difficult for penetrative insight into its emptiness. However, subsequently, it'll entrain all the other forms will be realized in their emptiness.
수주 삼로다이나 미기티와다이나 카리나 주진 찍든 계속 그 주진 찍든 돈이 떠나 아니 주진 쉐바도 저도 돈이 떠야라 야요 주진 삼로 거를 받고 삼로당 말 찍도 되게 쉐바도 쇼도 떠요 거래 재산 담보 부바다고 찍든도 아니 돈이 거는 니도 돈이 내봐야 보이잖아 아니 신다 가와다 메도다 디지털도 그 준제다 상을 먹고 땅 말고 대인 준제될 때는 남자는 저 이해도 양요 제바 제 먹고 치고 말하서 된들다가 된들 수동바 떠나 아니 제람이 못 단다서 또 살아 어서 어제서 된들거 시간이 못 된들도 오셔도 수동바 오세요 근데
In Arya Deva's 400 verses, it says, with the first realization of an instance of emptiness, the general and commonplace emptiness of all else follows. So it is take a subject for your analysis, and there are unique arguments that apply to that particular, and you apply the unique arguments to that particular to have the penetrative comprehension of its emptiness in that unique instant. With that unique instance and a realization of that unique particular's emptiness, general application of to the emptiness entailed in all phenomena follows naturally, not requiring the same unique particular of each phenomena. Rather, it follows as a matter of course that with insight into discrete particulars emptiness, that will apply to other phenomena. And so that is the first point. And then following that, the Paramita is the Heart Sutra. It is a condensed form of scripture, and so it presents form as a condensed element that may be the basis for realization of emptiness. With the realization of the emptiness of form, naturally ensues the realization of the emptiness of the other phenomena. And so in this condensed scripture, there is this concentration on form right there in the outset. So then now we've used our time.
정시 취재 관대적으로 수는 예외이기 여바이네 따뜻모는 빼기는 빼지기는 많이 말은 수 주지기는 예하고서 빼들을 잡아 답니다. 답에 단다 샤베 나는다 초를 유어데 타다를 빼져와 타다를 빼지 타바타를 누이도 나와서 라는 남자께야 다 그래서 이들 추이내기 때문에 Anda peñeti, ani pegna ta yaksho. Zo samotang tangi. Amu nyeba manye ba peting do kongor, peting ya wo kosen ani sine tan sujar. O to manye ta na komna lo manse de resons.
So in the contemplation of emptiness, one will take a basis for that contemplation, choose that basis however they may, but until there is the actual comprehension of the emptiness of that basis, one must rely upon examples that illustrate how mistaken perception of the emptiness of a particular basis use these metaphors to gain a sense of what mistaken perception entails. And so there are many different metaphors. A common, very powerful metaphor is the mistaken impression of a striped rope as being a dangerous poisonous snake. That is one. And another is a phenomenal experience as a mirage, and phenomenal experience as dreamlike, rather as dream. Use metaphors as you move towards a comprehension of the emptiness of the basis that you choose.
Then so choose development tenre which school rata so choose also pese da bola de pese da nona sugi la gres da nona sugi de la tani porque susu ma de do ma de to ne don la bo do ne don pe trin sama de trin ne don sama me do sta shegul ta lo shegul ta zama no nona susu 통고 do as 통도자만 나로게 둘삼 되게 도왔어. 이제 너는 수수 여 말아왔어. 그래서 어디를 빼지 않는 거 그랬어. 근데 빼 말 들어와서는 다 빼팅도 당고 야고 지도나 마시나 아니 대다가 겁나 This one is.
And in the monasteries, when emptiness was the logical demonstration of the emptiness of phenomena, their lack of inherent existence was presented to us, and we were given the handle to use to begin to grasp it of a metaphor or an example. The example that was first given to us is the example of a reflection in a mirror. And the argument it follows that it lacks inherent existence because it is dependently originated like a mirror reflection. And when you look at a reflection in a mirror, you see the mirror image and you will say, there I am, there's that spot on my face, or I need to wash my face. In any case, there I am is the experience. Yet there you are not. And that is a powerful example. So as you move towards a comprehension of emptiness, move by way of these examples, very effective.
Oh, that's the bacon. I don't you come, I don't you have water, water, and charm, and it's in that, and it's changing things up. Oh, buddy, and then rushing matter of the tomatoes and that in the nearby near what it is that. You say down and bed on Chazan Gore.
So you may proceed by using these examples to develop a comprehension of the emptiness of a given basis, but then you'll move from your example to an actual subject and the comprehension of in actuality you must bring to bear both examples as well as its application to each particular subject.
Oh, to sit down on the telling Desha and Mermji, songs, and it's a little bit Lamrim Cheval, Gewadi, and Karija was the Gewadi that the king on the Tembagi Mala was in a single ordination. The Gewadi Maladi, more symbols, more sin, and Gewadi movement or chill, Diana, and then Gewadi Mangro Diana. More joyless, the more judged. This is similar, very temple, more Kadichi Shigi away in the children. Then other two more told them after the visit coming on the Dunguas in a Suzuki Rabutuna, and it said he couldn't the Mateva, said Pekata, Sanjay Tamja Sanjay Salagoya, teach it and it's a bullying Chikanazula game partition, negative game partition. Okay, pool is something to be a water drink one of the Chimway.
With that, and then the virtue that is part of listening and teaching to the and of the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, that we consolidate that memory. Don't forget what we have learned, and so that the virtue that we have accumulated remains and isn't lost, and so that that virtue continues to increase. We may dedicate that virtue and dedicate that merit, and we may do this with bearing in mind the topic of the great treatise on the stages of the and also dedicate this virtue so that there's never any admixture of the vain concerns of a single lifetime, and that one's interest is rather broader in scope to encompass the well-being of all sentient beings, especially their well-being, which is achieved when they are established in the state of Buddhahood, and so that there are no obstacles in the achievement of that and in the preservation and continuation of the teachings. One may dedicate the merit. Page 12.
Lume mare keto loa mare yave wambo da keto tema sumbe sera kundu yang jambe yang ji sewe jesune tembe rima kuzan lamye jo nene jobe yana jo rangi jijin dobe lamje ne shura sewe jambe tabi Roe ije mba sese, yoe temba yore zenjoje, temba renje choje majaba, jam jam nyamba yoe jobe, nije jembo yira jewa ye, renje teje sawa jebora shu, seje yawe menjo jele, Namji yila pedeji, jawe zeba rindu kyongjuji, lazan jube tuje tujeji, gege seje medam nime, sera kundu jawe mabayi, namba jawa nanjuji, Ranze tibo chola chujuji, suje rula zimba ti, Tuden namje tabu roje tashi togun jangyu chi.
From my two collections, vast is space that I have amassed from working and working at this practice for a great length of time. May I prevent fitting without all those with my person life. Even though I could not reach this state, may I be healed of the compassion for all my lives. May I find the best of the paths of complete teaching. May I produce all the goods by practicing. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness as I have discerned. May I hold the teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread after climb. May I forever happen to say all these things. May the minds of those who wish for liberation from Conscious peace, and the Buddhist seeds be nourished for a long time by following the complete graduated path of enlightenment and the wonders product of the Buddhists and their sons. May all human and non-human beings have the means of diversity and make things conducive for practicing in the excellent paths, never departing in any of their lives from the purest path created by the Buddhists. Whenever someone makes an effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtues practices, may he always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere.
Dagi jinye sabe yewa di tena dawa kuna dami Kebara jesu dosan trabayi tembe nimbo lindu seje Nani rame de benda dewa alu tewe Chere sewa tenzin yaso yi shabe sidi badu zinyu Tambe bawo jeda temba kunjo sambo teyan teshin Deda kunji jesu nalo je jewa deda tawa tamche je owa gama chodo Dagi jewe tawa dikuya sambo chuchi rato mwa Janjo senjo rinpo che naje wana jeyu Jewa nyamba meba yi wane wandu ewa
I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of the Venerable Untitled Chapter. In the land encircled by please remain in the cyclic existence of innocence, just as the brave one should realize things as they are. Also, I dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these virtues of virtue with the dedication of praise by the victorious Escon one 3 times, so that I might perform the noble two selfless deeds. May the supreme virtue that has not arisen with the will, and that which has arisen not finished.
我之前记录的随着这些来源，确实就这一轮的那么主要是那这个这些。
Thank you. Thank you. Outside there's tea and croissants and there's also time we could use to talk about what we've thought about.
육체는 계시라.
Thank you.